Hello everyone, today's questions are asking why survivors of narcissistic abuse sometimes tend to over-explain themselves, give way too much information, and why they apologise when they have nothing to apologise for. Well, this can be due to the impact of prolonged emotional and psychological manipulation and abuse. Many people who have been on the wrong end of a narcissist are often left feeling dazed, confused, vulnerable, and exposed. However, when it comes to the abuse itself, in some cases people struggle to tell their stories. Now, sometimes it could be because they find it hard to articulate the nature of the abuse, because the behaviour was erratic, petty, and often made no sense at all. Also, narcissistic abuse isn't a one-off incident, nor is it always in your face. It can be subtle. It often begins as a series of little minor emotional hit-and-run attacks, until it escalates into daily criticism, devaluing, and rejection. But then there can also be the fear of not being believed, the fear of judgment and criticism from others. There could be the fear of being misunderstood or even being blamed for not leaving sooner. Lastly, there can be the fear of the abuser themselves. Narcissistic people can be very vindictive, and hell hath no fury like a narcissist scorned or exposed. But in other areas of their lives, people who have experienced narcissistic abuse can overshare information with others. So in this video, I'm going to break down the reasons why, the underlying factors, and lastly, look at a few ideas to help heal. So among other things, narcissistic abuse is characterized by manipulative tactics such as constant gaslighting, blame shifting, emotional exploitation, and devaluation. And many victims find themselves in a high-conflict environment where they had to navigate unpredictable and often unrealistic demands. And after long-term exposure to abuse and neglect, they end up exhibiting behavioural patterns and symptoms common with complex trauma. Symptoms such as chronic anxiety, depression, and being hypervigilant due to having to be constantly on guard. And this state of being constantly alert can lead to altered communication behaviours. Now, when it comes to the oversharing, this is often linked to how narcissistic people at first fool their victims into sharing personal information, which they later exploit, usually by twisting or deliberately misrepresenting it in order to shame, coerce, and control. And through a process of positive and negative reinforcement, they condition their victims to share openly in order to try to either gain approval or avoid punishment. Many victims reported feeling as if they were walking on eggshells. But narcissists often pressure, coerce, or con people into sharing their ideas, thoughts, experiences, and their personal information, but they do this while they also create a dynamic where boundaries are being eroded. And this can lead to low self-confidence, low self-esteem, and as I mentioned earlier, chronic anxiety. And the impact of this often continues after the relationship, after the abuse has ended, and for different reasons. One reason is because the boundaries have been so eroded and broken down that they can have a weakened sense of what's appropriate to share and what isn't necessary. And after being continually invalidated and isolated, victims of narcissistic abuse can have a desperate need for connection, and this can lead them to share excessively in the hope of feeling heard and understood. So in the early stages of a new friendship or a new relationship, they might overshare. They're really seeking reassurance, and this stems from a lack of feeling safe and fearing betrayal or disapproval. Now, when it comes to the over-explaining, narcissistic abuse often destroys people's sense of self-worth, and this happens through a process of being criticized and continually belittled. Narcissists have this need to feel superior to others, but this often involves them having to make other people feel inferior. There is also constant lying and gaslighting. Narcissistic people distort, sometimes even rewrite reality to make their victims doubt themselves. Some examples of how they do this could be how they pick up on minor discrepancies just to challenge their victims' perceptions and their experiences, or how they can deliberately misinterpret or misrepresent what the victim has said, so the victim ends up having to explain or defend themselves against something they never did or said in the first place. But they feel they have to justify their thoughts, their feelings, and their actions just to be believed. They find themselves having to explain simple concepts such as they don't like being treated like crap, but they're trying to explain to someone who has set out not to understand. And even after the relationship has ended, they might find themselves over-explaining themselves, desperately seeking the validation they never got from the narcissist. Another reason for the over-explaining could be it's also to avoid conflict or to gain approval. Due to the nature of the relationship, they might anticipate being attacked or rejected for anything they do or say, so they think they have to justify even just everyday decisions. Lastly, there is the over-apologizing. Narcissistic people shift blame onto their victims to make them feel responsible for not only everything that goes wrong, but even their emotions and their actions. And long-term blame shifting can have people feeling as if they're always at fault, always in error. So the apologizing becomes a learned strategy to de-escalate or to placate the narcissist, just to avoid further conflict. In many cases, they apologize for minor, trivial things or things that have nothing to do with them, things they have no control over. They apologize for how they feel about being treated disgracefully. They apologize for needing to rest. They apologize for maybe being in a constant state of anxiety. They might even apologize for apologizing. But again, after the relationship has ended, they're no longer in that environment. They can still remain hypervigilant, monitoring and fearing other people's reactions, fearing that any disagreement or expression of their own needs might lead to them being attacked. So to summarize, in all three cases, the underlying factors behind the behaviors are firstly, because narcissistic abuse erodes and diminishes people's sense of self-worth. And due to intermittent reinforcement, they can become conditioned to be overly reliant on positive feedback from their abuser, which very rarely comes, and when it does, it's usually at a cost. So the oversharing, over-explaining and over-apologizing develop as coping strategies to try to manage narcissistic people's unrealistic demands and their unpredictable behaviors. They are trauma responses associated with long-term hypervigilance and anxiety from being in an unstable, high-conflict relationship or environment. But the behaviors can also come from a desperate need for connection and validation. But many victims have been conditioned to believe that they're useless, selfish, always at fault, and they are responsible for other people's emotions and their actions. And this can continue into other relationships and interactions. But when it comes to healing, the first thing I'd say is there's no shame in having been on the wrong end of a narcissist. And the impact of the abuse and the neglect is not a sign of weakness, nor does it define your worth. They're actually normal responses to a situation that was abnormal. And telling your story is important in the healing process. Seeing a therapist is a good place to start because they can help you make sense of your emotions and your experiences. Also, practice a little self-compassion, have some patience with yourself, practice some self-care, because this can help reduce your frustration, your anxiety, and the need for others to validate you. And this can help break the unhealthy cycle of oversharing and over-explaining. Lastly, learn the difference between meeting and managing expectations, your own as well as other people's. And if you need to apologize, then by all means do so. After all, it is only good manners. But only if you have something to apologize for. And you can care, you can empathize, but you're not responsible for other people's reactions to your no. Now, if there's anything in this video that you recognize, and if there's been anything that you found useful to help in your recovery, whether that was practicing self-compassion, setting healthy boundaries, or even just learning new skills, and if you feel comfortable enough, then please share it in the comments section. Because someone reading it may be struggling and they might benefit from your wisdom and your experience. And to be honest, I like to learn what people find helpful as well. I'm Darren Magee, and if you found this topic to be helpful, please consider subscribing to my channel. And until next time, thanks for watching.